We are David and me, Adela. I'm data engineer and tech lead in Lightful Connect. And also I love to participate in communities, and I'm organizer of this meetup. And also I organized other communities like Barcelona Java user groups and Women Time Makers Barcelona. I work with David and he will present himself.
Hi everyone, I'm David. I work in Lightful Connect into the data analytics team. And right now I'm going to present our speech.
And now we will talk about how David and I have adopted DBT in our company in Lightful Connect. As we said before, we work together in the data analytics team here, and our work is to be responsible for the data platform and also be enablers for data initiatives. We started 1 year ago, more or less, and we created a new data analytics platform. Because of this, we investigated DBT and we decided to adopt DBT here. Today, we will explain our journey with DBT. Why did we choose DBT? How did we implement DBT at Lightful Connect? And the current scenario and next steps. What will we do next month? Why did we choose DBT? We were creating a new data platform, and we had some pain points that we wanted to solve. One pain point was data analysts depended a lot on data engineers. They were not autonomous. For example, data analysts need a new dimension or a new metric for one KPIs. They needed to request to the data team, to data engineers. And data engineers had a lot of things, and maybe they can do this month, this week, next month. They cannot do immediately. And the data analysts were frustrated. And also the data engineers were a bottleneck for everything in data analytics. This problem was because we had complex system with language like Java, Scala, etc. It's not easy for data analysts. Another pain point is to find data. We had a lot of data sources. We didn't have a centralized piece like data lake, data warehouse. Also, we didn't have a data catalog. And when someone needed to answer some questions, he or she needed to find the data to answer the question. And if we didn't have a data catalog, it's very, very, very difficult. In the slide, we can see an example. If I want to analyze clicks of ads with photos of bedrooms, I want to answer this question, but I need to find the information. My first steps is, where is this information? I'll check some database, I'll ask some colleagues, and maybe after 1 week, I didn't find it, or maybe I found it. But if I found it, I'm not comfortable because I'm not sure if the answer is correct, because I'm not sure if the data set is correct, if I understood the data or not. And I'm not comfortable to share the answer with stakeholders, for example. With these pain points, we analyze what we wanted to do, our goals and our requirements. We would like to everyone can access to the data, can explore and create insights in an easy fashion, autonomously. We would like to create a self-service, it's important, a self-service data platform. And here we can see some user requirements. For example, every team is able to publish and consume data on the platform in easy fashion. Everyone is able to discover and explore data on the platform in easy fashion. Everyone is able to create transformation for aggregating data on the platform in easy fashion. The requirement we will solve with DBT, for example. The last user requirement is everyone is able to access and create dashboards for reporting and analytics in the platform in easy fashion. At this point, we investigated a lot of things and we choose to use DBT because it's easy for data analysts. For example, the language is SQL and they don't need to know other language more complex for data analysts like Java, Scala, Python also in some cases. And also it's very, very important that DBT has best practice of development, version control, testing, documentation, and it's very, very useful, for example, the documentation, because with DBT, we can create a data catalog. We decided to use DBT. How did we implement DBT at Lightful Connect? We did it by use cases in an iterative way. For the first use case, we choose use case with business impact. It's important it was a real use case and also easy use case, fast to implement and few data sources, because the idea was to do a MVP to check DBT and the data platform that we were creating. did we do the first use case? Only us, the data analytics. Why? We did it alone in order to avoid having a lot of variables. If the first use case didn't work, if we do with other team, for example, and the use case doesn't work, we are not sure if the problem is DBT, it is the collaboration between teams, etc. We wanted to learn and understand DBT and to check if it accomplished our expectations with a real use case. And as the result was great, we chose continue with our plan to implement DBT. And now David will continue.
Thank you, Adela. That's the second use case. Okay. Adela just mentioned we did our first use case, which was pretty successful here in the company, Lifeful Connect. So question was, how did we choose our second use case? Keep in mind is that the use case had to be a real value for the company, the business impact. Then, since our goal was making our ultimate goal was making data analyst team skilled enough to develop their own ETLs, transformations, and dashboards, we chose at that time pair programming as the optimum scenario for our next move. Okay, so we started to work in pair programming very closely with data analysts on this second use case. So this peer programming scenario, what provides us at this point is the necessary framework to help the data analyst team to acquire some software engineering best practices. Features that DBT provides is version control, testing, very important, documentation, dependencies between modules, etc. That kind of things that seems very, very common for software developers, but it's not common for business analysts. So the thing was to try to make them shift quite a bit their mindset and acquire those best practices. So basically what we were doing is try to turn them into some sort of analytics engineer. What I mean by analytics engineer is basically saying that they were adopting those best practices of software development into business intelligence, data analytics, where we right now, data analytics teams are working more autonomously at this point. So right now, what we're doing is just providing for them that list of services, we might say. It's basically sheer ingestion and maintenance of data sources. So when they need a new data source, we just try to ingest them, whatever the data source and whatever the technology behind the data source is. We also provide a service of infrastructure or cost management. There might be some, when you're in the cloud, and we all know it, cost is fundamental. Keep it in mind, because otherwise we might get into bankruptcy very quickly. So we kind of provide some advisory in the cost management. We also provide some data governance. Since we've got several teams in several different business areas, what we're trying to achieve is to have an overall picture and know which is responsible, who is producing what data, the evolution of that data. Okay, we also provide DBT support as well as other tools we are using. And as I said before, liaising with other teams. It's kind of a transversal team, which are communicating all the time. So basically, right now, we've opened the DBT technology and the DBT framework. So now our next step in short term is open DBT technology for development teams. And later on, we will open DBT for business units as well. Right now, what we're doing is a different approach, which is more scalable and quick, which is we are just sending and using those sources about DBT fundamentals, okay? So you've got here the link. They're pretty good, actually. So they can use them and train themselves and learn about the fundamentals of DBT. I engage you to take a look at them because they're quite good. And they can give you an overall picture about DBT, how it works, etc. Once the first point is done, then ultimate goal is bring data democracy to the whole company. But since we are pretty agile and iterative, tactically, we don't know exactly what's going to be our next move yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was really interesting.
Welcome.
Do we have questions? I actually have one. I promised everyone that was not scripted or anything. It's a legit one. How did you manage business logic metrics definition after essentially becoming more decentralized? Before you were the bottleneck, but you had one team, you could define all the metrics you wanted. You were in charge of the business logic. How did you manage like single source of truth. Take like a metric like revenue. How do you define revenue across the entire company now that you are not the only team that can basically do it? Was that a challenge? How do you answer that?
Now the platform is self-service, but it's not complete self-service. The idea is to talk with David and me in order to check, for example, if we have these metrics or not, if we have a DBT project and schema in data warehouse about this domain, because the data warehouse and the DBT projects are organized by domains. For example, in our case, B2C, B2B, etc. And also the teams are organized more or less about domain. The important point here is not self-service. They need to contact us. In the future, maybe it will be a problem or not.
We just a kind of overall picture, and we know which is the owner of what data, of what metric, of what information. And we just built in domains. We just applied DDD, the famous DDD as in software development. We just applied here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.